Beautiful. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ria. I'm a compulsive overeater and bulimic. Thank you all for your flexibility and patience when I had to delay and then reschedule. And as all of you, I'm sure know, things over in Israel are interesting right now. So life is a little day at a time. Let's put it that way. So today we're going to talk about step 8. I'm going to apologize in advance because my whole family is home. It's Hanukkah here, so everyone's on vacation. So you'll probably hear some chatter in the background. I let them out of their cages for a little bit, so they might interrupt. So anyway, step 8. Step 8 is actually really fast. So it's on page 76, third paragraph, if you'd like to look long. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. And we're going to stop there. So it says here that they lump 8 and 9 together, but I actually wanted to separate 8 and 9 because there's sort of a mental process we have to go through in order to complete step 8 so that we can start doing the work of step 9. So before we even get to that, I want to talk about why we have to do this in general. So quick review of the steps that we were starting with, that brought us here. So step 1, we admitted we were powerless, right? We hit that one pretty hard. In other words, I cannot even see a point of working these steps unless I know there is a problem, because no one actually wants to do this. That's just a fact. Nobody wants to work the 12 steps because it's hard work and it's not fun. And we have to look at things and get rid of things and change the way we are. Addicts don't like change. So I have no reason to do this unless I know it's a solution to a problem that I cannot fix myself. So if I'm not clear on step 1, that means that I really can't move forward with the rest. For example, I had somebody recently who came to me and said, I'm ready to work the steps, but I also don't want to get rid of this food, and I'm going to have this for a snack, and I had a slip, and I had this. No judgment, but clearly you haven't admitted your powerlessness yet. So why are you working the steps? You already have a solution, which is the things that you're eating. If you already have one, you don't need this. Until I know that I have no other solution except for this, it's not going to work, because there's still some lingering idea in the back of my head that says, okay, I'll do this temporarily, and then I'll get back to my real solution, which is this, which is whatever food I'm going to pick up. Until the day comes where I realize that food is not an option for me anymore, will I really give myself over to these steps? Because it says half measures avail us nothing. So if I'm only in this halfway, I'm going to get nothing. I've used this metaphor before. If I walk over to a vending machine, we all have experience with vending machines. If I walk over to a vending machine and a chocolate bar costs $1 and I put in 50 cents, they're not giving me half of the chocolate bar. I'm getting 0. So it's the same thing with this. I have to come in and be willing to pay the full $1 in order to get the results. If I'm coming in with 50 cents, I'm not getting anything. Okay. So let's all assume that we're here today because we know our powerlessness. There's no going back. There's no question. The question is settled. And by the way, the question is not why, it's what. Okay, because so many of us, why am I a compulsive overeater? And it must be this, and it must be because of my abusive childhood, or there have a history of genetics in my family. There is no answer to this question. They give it about 2 sentences, maybe like a paragraph in this entire book, because the question of why is irrelevant. The question is what? Are you one or not? Are you powerless or not? If your answer is probably, you're not ready yet. If your answer is maybe, you're not ready yet. If your answer is yes, and I'm desperate, please help me, we're in. Okay, now we're ready. Okay, so once we've hit that powerlessness, we now move to step 2, which is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves would restore us to sanity. So if we are powerless, if we don't have a power, then we need a power greater than us to give us a solution, right? So we had one that was giving us a solution. That solution was food. right? We gave our power to food. We turned our will and our lives over to that food. We had a day at a time solution with food. I ate what I needed to eat. And then when I was, that did it for me that day. And then the next day I did it again. So I had a power greater than myself. The problem was that power greater than myself was destroying me. It was the way I used it for life. I used it to cope with my life. I used it to bring me happiness. But unfortunately, that solution eventually was my downfall. So if I don't have that solution anymore, I need another power. So I have to develop a relationship with a power greater than myself. That power is your choice, whatever that is. In this book, they use the word God. I happen to like the word God just because it's easy, it's quick, and I don't have another one. So again, this book, as we've talked about in the past, does not give us they're not trying to sell us on the existence of God. They're trying to sell us on our need for God, right? So if I've come to this place where I know I'm powerless and I also know I need a power greater than myself, then I might choose to call God or I might not. But if I am really ready to start working with this thing that's greater than me, I'm ready to go on to step 3, where I actually make that choice to say, all right, you're in charge now. You're the Charlie, I'm the angel. Give me my mission. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to turn my will and my life over to you. But before I can do that, there's still some work to be done, because I could say, okay, I'm ready to live one day at a time in God's power, but I can't live one day at a time in the present when I still have a messy past that needs to be cleaned up, because the consequences of that are going to keep coming in. If I still have resentments I'm holding on to, they don't just instantly go away because I say, oh, I'm going to live in God's power one day at a time now. It doesn't work like that. I still have cleaning up to do. So I take my inventory in step 4, right, which we talked about pretty in depth. I talk about, and then I give it over to another person and God in step 5. I say that I'm ready to have God remove everything that I've done inventory for in step 4, right? And remember, this inventory is sort of like taking inventory of a store with stock that's no longer valuable. If I have a store, like I said, if I had an electronics store and I devoted an entire section to typewriters, I'm going to go out of business because nobody uses typewriters anymore. They're not helpful. So I need to get rid of them. So once I'm ready to say, okay, take the typewriters out, I get to that place of willingness. I express my prayer. I ask God to take them away. Whether or not that happens instantly, who knows? It might be a lifelong process, but the point is I'm willing to start letting them go. Then we get to step 8, because it's not just a cute idea to say, listen, I know what I did wrong. I know I have these character defects and I'm willing to live life differently now. If I hurt someone, I have to go and fix it. It's not so simple. If I owe someone $10,000, the money doesn't just like evaporate just because I say that I am going to live my life more differently now. Hold on. Sorry. Can I help you?
No, not.
Okay, great. Sorry. Welcome to my life. Okay. So step 8 is we have to look at where we have to make amends. Now, 8 is just the list. 9 is going out and making amends. So we're just going to talk about the list today. Okay. So for those of you in my big book group, I sent a PDF of a step 8 and 9 list, which you can use to figure out who you need to make amends to. Now, it says here already, we have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. Meaning, if you don't know who you're supposed to be making amends to, go back and look at your 4th step, because that's going to give you a very clear idea of where you've done harm. Now, when we went into our 4th step, it's nice. We get to rub our hands together and say, yeah, I get to make a list of who harmed me, which I can list off the top of my head like that. Who I need to make amends to, that's a little bit harder because I don't want to make amends to anybody. And like we said in our 4th step, it's looking at my part. Yes, we do have the resentments, causes, and effects, which is what somebody else did to me. But then when we did our turnarounds, we start looking at where our part is, where we were selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid. And like I said before, even if the other person is 99% wrong and I was 1% wrong, that 1% is mine, which means I have to make amends for that 1%. Now, that's where the tricky part comes in, because I don't know about you, but if somebody else is 99% wrong and I'm 1% wrong, why should I have to make amends to them? They're way more wrong than I am. And they probably will not even say, I'm sorry back to me, because they're the 99% wrong. And I don't even like them anyway. But if I want to be free, I need to make amends for that 1%. I have to be honest about where I was coming in this whole situation. The one thing I will say also, I've heard people say, yeah, I put myself on my resentment list. I put myself on my amends list. No, nowhere in the big book does it say this. Okay. We're not, this whole process of working the 12 steps and getting abstinent and changing your life is making amends to yourself. That's what it is. So you don't need to like have a formal amends situation with yourself, nor do you need to be on your resentment list, because guess what? We spend our whole life flagellating ourselves. We spend our whole lives punishing ourselves with food and living in self-hatred. We already know we have a resentment against ourselves. We already know about this because we see it on our bodies or we feel it in our souls. So there's no reason to put ourselves on our resentment list, nor do we need to be on our amends list. We are actively making amends to ourselves every day that we are living in the solution. Okay, so that's number one. You do not need to be on your list. Also, we are trying to move out of self-centeredness into God-centeredness, other-centeredness. So you have no business being on your amends list. This is not about you anymore. This is about making it right for somebody else. Okay. Right. So let's take a look at the step 8 and 9 list. If you have it in the WhatsApp chat, that's fine. But if not, I have it here also that you can look at. Okay. And for those of you who have like a PDF reader, you can also fill this out on your computer. You don't have to print it out and write it. But anyway, let's take a look. Okay. This form, it's a useful guide. Okay. And you can fill it out directly. You can use your 4th step and just kind of copy paste. If you know where you've been wrong, then you can figure out how to take from there and put here. Okay. So you have the name of the person harmed over here. Sorry, I know it's backwards. You write specifically the harm that you did to that person. Okay. Then you're going to write what kind of amends you need to make to them. Sometimes it might be just sending them a check. Sometimes it might be taking them out for coffee and having a conversation, a formal apology. Sometimes it might be something public, or if they're not living anymore, living amends, or writing them a letter and reading it at their grave. There are a lot of different ways to do this. Then it's, will this amend harm that person or anyone else? Yes or no? And that's a very important question, which we're going to get to in a second. And then, are we ready to do the amends now, sometime, or never? Okay. So this is, the idea here is just to get the names down, and then you can classify them by willingness. Meaning if I have, for example, when I was a kid, I used to like shoplift from CVS. So I go to CVS, and I actually went there and I was like, okay, going there isn't such a big deal. It's not like the end of my life. So I actually went to CVS and offered them money for stuff that I had taken from them, and they wouldn't accept it. But the point was, it wasn't a big, so I just sent the money like to charity or something. But the point is, it wasn't about, for me, it was like, to me, it wasn't a big deal. Now, if I have a, we all know this, my father's wife, when she did something to me that I really didn't like, making amends to her was like pulling out every single one of my teeth with pliers. Okay. But I had to do it. Mind you, if I had to put her on this list, she would be like, never, 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 never. But I did it anyway. But if I had to classify, I would definitely do CVS before I did my father's wife. That's the point. Okay. So let's talk about, so the willingness here is really important. Okay. And it's when you put them on the list, don't be afraid to put them on the list, because you don't have to do it today. Just have them on the list so that you know. Because as we go through the process of making amends, we find that the heart opens and our willingness expands. So that person you said never about at the beginning, by the time you're at the end of your amends, you might be in the sometime, possibly, maybe. And then you get so excited by seeing what happens with the 9-step promises that you're like, yeah, fine, I'll call them. So just have them on the list. That's all I'm saying. Just put them on there. Okay. Now, will this amend harm that person or anyone else? So this is very, very important. And we're going to talk about this more next month when we talk about the 9-step, but this is a very big deal, right? Because we cannot buy our own salvation by selling other people. It doesn't work like that. And that even goes for something, an amends, for example, if I spoke poorly about someone and they have no idea, going to them and telling them I talk shit about them is not helpful. That's just going to hurt their feelings. So why would I go and do that? If anything, I would make a point of being gracious to them in general And I would stop speaking negatively about them, and I would make amends to the people I talked badly about them to, because that brings those people, complicates their relationship, and also hurts the other person. When I get involved in gossip, this is something I've done multiple times and probably will do multiple times because I'm a hopeless gossip. But basically, when I gossip, I don't make amends to the person I gossiped about. I make amends to the person I gossiped to, because this is not the kind of energy I want to bring in. They don't deserve to be brought down like that. And it's undermining my relationship with the person I'm talking to. We have many more important things to talk about than somebody else. Now, that's not to say sometimes I don't need to vent. That's different. But if I'm just talking shit to talk shit, it's not helpful to reach out to the person who I'm talking about. It's just more about being respectful and treating other people with respect, because even though gossip feels good to me, it's self-centered, because I'm basically telling the other person, look how much better I am than them. I'm not taking the other person that I'm talking to into consideration. I'm not asking them how they are. I'm basically using them as a wall to bounce off my own self-reflection of, look what I know, look at how much better I am, look at how, that's what judgment is to say, I'm up here, you're down here. And, it also undermines a relationship, because if someone's talking crap to me about somebody else, I'm going to sit there going, well, how do I know that you're not doing that about me with somebody else? So makes me an untrustworthy person. So that's the point. We have to think bigger than just, who am I hurting here? Who am I putting on the altar of my own salvation? Okay. And I've told this story before. I don't remember if I've told it in this group, but I'll tell it now. Basically, when I was a kid, there was a counselor at this camp I went to, and there was a very odd situation. She did one thing to me that felt inappropriate, but nothing that I could say, this is specifically a bad thing. It was just something that could have been inappropriate, but I wasn't sure. Long story short, a few people, few other kids in the camp came out and said that she had done something to them as well. And there was a whole court case, and things kind of moved really quickly. I was about 11 years old. And all of a sudden there were 2 DAs, district attorneys, in my house. And I didn't really know how to handle it. And in my head, I said, well, that one instance wasn't really anything. But at the same time, I felt like something did happen to me. So what did I do? I lied. And I exaggerated. I elaborated on my story. I found out later from when I had to work through it later with a psychologist, what I did was actually a very normal response. At the time, though, I felt like a huge liar. It was really, really bad for me, even though there was this one thing that happened, but it didn't feel like enough. So I basically sat on the witness stand and said things that happened that never actually happened. The person who was taken to court was eventually acquitted. She didn't go to jail. But for many years, that was my secret, that I had lied. And I punished myself for it for a very long time. And when I finally got to the point where I was going to make amends, I was ready to reach out to this person. I was ready to write her a letter. I was ready to go see her, call her, go talk to her. And I ended up talking to my sponsor at the time about it. And she said, before we do that, I'm going to reach out to my sponsor, because she's a lawyer. And we just want to make sure that all is, kosher over here. So she reached out to her sponsor, and her sponsor said, no. She cannot call this woman, because even though it's been 15 years, if I come out basically and say that something I said on the witness stand was not true, this woman and or her family could sue my parents for slander. Which means, in other words, to make my own amends, I would be selling my parents up the creek. I couldn't do that. It's not right. It's not fair. My parents certainly had been through enough with me. They didn't, that's not fair. So what I had to do was I wrote a letter to her, and I read it to my sponsor, and that had to be that, because I could not compromise other people for my own salvation. Now, interestingly, many years later, I ended up in a situation where people said things about me that were untrue. And I ended up losing my job and my home. Now, I have no idea how God works. I am not one of those people who says with any certainty about anything about the way the universe works. But I do like the idea that maybe that was it was very traumatic for me. I wouldn't want to repeat it, but the point is, because I couldn't make direct amends, I had to make direct amends that way by experiencing what this woman had gone through. And it sort of tied it up with a bow for me to the point where now I feel like it's resolved. Do I know if that's true? I have no idea. I don't know like cosmic points or how any of those things work. But the point is, I couldn't make direct amends then, but I was able to make amends by going through a certain experience, trial by fire kind of situation. That's how I make peace with something that I went through. Now we're going to get to another point, and I'm really actually glad that I brought up that story, because that particular experience that I mentioned later. And by the way, I'm moving really fast. Is everybody clear? Is everyone following me? Yeah, we're good. Okay, fine. The experience that I was talking about before happened to be a situation in which I was in a communal position, and basically because of community politics, rumors got around, blah, 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 blah. And the people that I worked for, the powers that be, who, well, we're all women here, were men, basically decided that it was easier to get rid of me than actually like take the higher road and have an adult conversation. So I was livid. I was so angry for so long about the unfairness and the injustice and the this and then that. And I ended up relapsing. It took a while, but I held on to my self-righteousness and my victimhood really hard because it was so unfair and I wanted justice. And I knew I wasn't going to get it. And after my relapse, I had to go and do some work. And that was that was sort of my crash course in forgiveness. Now, forgiveness has to start at our 8th step. Now, how does that make sense, right? In order to really, the forgiveness process starts around our 5th step when we start telling our truth about ourselves and people are coming back to us and saying, yeah, me too, we're human, we're all on the same playing field, et cetera. That those seeds of those ideas start to germinate in step 5. In step 8, we're realizing that if we want to go out and make amends to people and have people forgive us, we have to forgive them too. We can't ask for something that we're not capable of giving back. It's not fair. Not that everything in life is fair, but the point is, this is the spiritual work we're doing. What we're putting out, we want to get back. I can't go out there hanging on to old resentments and then demanding that people forgive me for what I did. It doesn't work like that. So step 8 is really where we're starting forgiveness into action. Now, let's talk about what that means. First of all, like I said before, working the 12 steps is our amends to ourselves. It is an act of forgiveness to ourselves, because as we clean up, we're cleaning up what we did. Now, there are things that we cannot clean up. There are things that will never be resolved, either because somebody's no longer living, or because it's impossible to reach out to them, or because they're just big things that are so messed up that just unfortunately, we don't live in a movie and all the plot holes don't resolve by the end. It's just how it is. Things don't make sense. That said, forgiveness isn't about saying, I need all my T's crossed and I's dotted in order for it to be okay with me. The idea, and I steal this from Sandy Beach and I will steal it till the day I die. The idea of forgiveness is giving up hope of having had a better past. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Forgiveness is giving up hope of having had a better past. What does that mean? Well, it basically means I am no longer holding on to the idea that this should not have happened, because that's usually why we hang on to anger. We hang on to anger because we're saying, this should not have happened. It should not have happened to me. I live in a world where I deserve justice and fairness. Well, first of all, who are you to say that something shouldn't have happened? We have no idea. We don't know what's supposed to happen and not happen. We're not God. Number 2, no one ever said that life was fair. I listen to kids sometimes. That's not fair. That's not fair. Yeah. I say that to my kids all the time. No one ever said it was fair. No one ever promised fairness. I don't know where you guys got this from. Yes, justice is something we all strive for, but let's be real. We do not live in a just world. Even our justice system is unjust, okay? There is no such thing as a perfectly fair and perfectly just world. I wish there was, but maybe I don't, because if things were really just, imagine what the kind of like justice I would reap on myself for all the shit that I've pulled. Okay, so maybe the lack of justice and fairness in this world is really a mercy. Okay, that's all I'm saying there. But the point is, we have to let go of the idea that things should not have gone the way they've gone. So this can be hard for people to swallow, especially when they've been victims of a real injustice or abuse, God forbid, or, you know, all kinds of horrible shit happens to people. You know, unfortunately, it's a sad thing, but bad things happen to people every single day. It's happening right now. I hear stories right now that whatever. And in order for me to live, I have to let go of the idea that this shouldn't have happened. Because the longer I hold on to it, and the longer I say, I demand something different, I demand a different past, it's going to kill me. I will not be free if I hold on to the present, demanding a different past. It happened. We can't make it unhappen. Yeah, you know, I know people, unfortunately, I sponsor a lot of women and I hear a lot of stories of abuse. And I hate it. I hate that happens to women. I hate that it happens to men too. But the point is, we live in a world where it happens. So if it happened, and it happened to me, let's say when I was 8 or 9 years old, if I'm 45 and I'm still angry about it, that's no longer the other person's fault. Not to say that they were right to abuse, God forbid, but if I'm still angry and holding on to the fact that I want that to be different, that's my problem. That's not to say that it should, I wish it hadn't happened. I wish that we lived in a world where every child and every woman and every person was safe, but we don't. The fact is, it happened. I can't make it unhappen. It's that simple. When I don't bring my judgment and my subjectivity to an event, it simply becomes something that happened. If I'm not going in demanding rightness and fairness and justice, it's just something that happened. Doesn't mean it's good. It's just something that happened. That's it. Not a punishment for anything. It's not, you know, retribution. It's just something that happened. It's not personal. Even when it feels personal, it's not personal, because 100% of the time what people are doing, they're not doing because of you, they're doing because of themselves. You know, people who are abusive are not abusive because they don't like you. They're abusive probably because they were abused. So does it make it right? Absolutely not, but it's not personal. And I can't sit here and say they should have done this because they didn't. They did not. And luckily and unluckily for us, it can cost us our life if we hang on to those things. So if I want to survive, I have to learn to forgive. Forgiveness does not mean that what you did was okay. It just means that it happened and I'm moving on now. That's it. I'm just not going to hold on to my anger about it anymore. Doesn't mean that you have to love this person or have a relationship with them. No, it's just, you're not somebody I need to be around. And I don't necessarily like what you did, but I accept that you did it. Because that's all we can do. There's no undoing what happened. It sounds kind of ruthless and cold, but I promise you it's the way to freedom. So we have to give up hope of having had a better past. But we also have to clean up what we've contributed to the past. So that's what this list is really about, right? So for example, if I have stolen, I need to make retribution. If I owe someone something, I need to make amends for that. If I've said something hurtful to someone and they know it, I need to make amends for them. These are the things that I have to clean up, because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm forgiving myself. I give up hope. I'm giving up hope of having had a better past. It's fine. Everything's off the table now. I absolve myself of all these horrible things I've done. Well, everybody who did them too is like, well, what the fuck? Like, oh, you're just absolved now? Like, it doesn't work like that. There are still natural consequences that we have to learn to deal with, because part of addiction is giving ourselves permission to act however we want with no consequences. But that's not how life works. We have to deal with the consequences of our actions. That's what being an adult is. So this is learning how to adult, right? Because anyone who's active in addiction is still keeping themselves a child to a certain degree. We're hiding away from real life. We're hiding away from feeling things. We're hiding away from relationships. We're hiding away from intimacy. We're hiding away from consequences, hard things. We don't want to do the hard things, right? This is the beginning of learning how to live in reality on life's terms, which means if I make a mistake, I need to fix it. And you should know, I still struggle with this. I grew up in a very well-to-do family. We had live-in housekeepers, never had to do my own laundry, never had to wash a dish, never had to do anything. And to this day, if something like spills or breaks in the house, my instant thought is, well, okay, someone else will take care of it. Like, that's literally my go-to. Mind you, I'm the one who has to take care of it because I am not an extremely well-to-do person, even though, thank God, I have cleaning help. But for the most part, I'm the one taking care of the things. I don't want to take care of the things. I don't want to do them. The other day, my dog got her leash caught under my shower door. The shower door popped off, fell on the floor, and smashed. Glass everywhere, okay? My first thought was, oh, I have to wake up my husband for him to clean it up. Okay, first of all, the dog is my dog. Second of all, I literally watched it happen. And like, he's asleep. Like, well, I'm going to wake him up to clean it? Fine. So I cleaned up the glass. I deigned to clean up the glass, okay? I did it, you guys. I did that. I cleaned up the glass. But don't think in my head, I'm thinking, okay, he's going to call the glass guy and get a new shower door, okay? Because it's not my job. I don't need to do that. Like, I already cleaned up the glass. Like, come on. Like, this is how my brain operates. I do not want to take responsibility for the things that are my responsibility. I'm literally putting on paper on this list the things that I did and how I am going to take responsibility for them. That's why so many people, by the way, they'll go hard on 1, 2, and 3. They'll do in 4 and 5, and then they choke as soon as it comes to 8 and 9. Because now it's like actually doing the stuff. Nobody wants to do this. This is fun. No one wants to take responsibility. Like, I'll tell you, my sponsor, what I did, but I have to go to the person I hurt and tell them? Hell no. But this is what it is, guys. This is living life on life's terms so that we don't have to have a past that we have to forgive for later. We clean up as we go. If I had left the glass in the bathroom, it would still be there. And then I'd be walking into the bathroom to brush my teeth and wondering why my feet are all bloody. And then being like, complaining about my bloody feet. Well, guess what? You didn't clean up the glass. That's what this is. If you go around smashing other people's doors and you don't clean up the glass and they get mad at you because their feet are bloody, who's right here? You didn't clean up the glass. Here is where we start cleaning up the glass, okay? So I'm thinking maybe we'll do something a little interactive here. Would anyone like to volunteer, maybe, on somebody who they feel like they might owe an amends to, and we can talk through how we would put it on this list? Anybody want to volunteer? Yeah, Edwina or Helen, you want to give me one? Okay, hold on. So let's unmute you. Thank you, Helen. I appreciate that. Okay, and Helen, do you mind being recorded? Is that okay?
No, I don't mind being recorded.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk through this. So let's talk about somebody who you think you might have harmed, who you think you might owe an amends to.
I owe an amends to my sister.
Okay.
Who's 3 years younger than I am and who I tortured during her growing up years.
Okay. And so let's be more specific then. Okay. So you said you tortured her. Okay. So how did you torture her? Because when we make events, we're going to talk about this later. We're going to name specifically the things that we did. So give me a few examples of ways that you tortured her.
Every time she did or said something I didn't like, I would jump on her, hold her arms down, and swing my hair in her face.
To be fair, you do reserve the right as the older sibling to do that, but I hear where you're going. I hear where you're going with this. Go ahead. Yeah, go
But
on.
wait a second. I
Okay.
made amends for that.
Okay, fine.
I made amends for that, but I have maintained a resentment toward
Okay.
her, and I have made amends to her for all kinds of things, but I did it over the telephone, and I did it in a way where I understood that I was jealous of her accomplishments, angry that she even was part of the family, angry that she succeeded so much.
Mhm.
And I don't think I have completed my amends. It's a misubach. It's a very complicated thing. I don't think I'm done with it.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, and
Okay.
and the thing is that over the years, she is a very smart person, very accomplished person, and she knows how to lash out. And she has paid me, you know, and I have always thought that it's 95% hers and 5% mine. And I think that there's still a tremendous amount going on between us, and I don't know how to clean it up.
Okay. I love this. I love this. And I'll tell you why. Because Helen just gave us a whole story, right? We got the whole story. Now we're going to distill it right down into what we're actually doing here. Okay. So first you started with what happened as kids. Okay. Then you said you made amends for it. So technically should be resolved, right? No. You just said that there's a whole resentment going on for this, and this, and she's lashing out at you. This is gorgeous because we basically create a situation in which we bring out the worst in people. But Bill W. writes this, okay? So we act in a way that brings out the worst in people and then wonder why they're assholes, okay? So that's not to say that your sister has been all roses to live with. I have no idea. But, oh, hold on. Bye, sweetie, I love you. Okay. But whether or not she was this, if you're telling me that you still have jealousy and this and this and this, that's fine. That's how you feel. I want to know what you did to communicate to her, even in subtle ways that she felt this way, because there's no way that your sister would lash out to someone who is supportive and wonderful and open and gives her lots of chizuk and, all of those things, right? Like that would not happen. So
No.
clearly you're, telegraphing in a osmotic,
Right.
telepathic way that
Right.
this is going on. So give me some specific concrete ways in which you communicated with your sister that you have beef with her. Now,
Well, I know
not shaking your hair in her face. Now.
No, right. And now I know that I have gossiped about her.
Boom. Go ahead.
She's a public person, and a public person and a person who has accomplished a lot. And I have gossiped about her in a way that puts her down.
Okay.
And I've recently recovered enough to sometimes gossip about her, but say what a wonderful person she is and the good things she does.
Oh,
I'm
that is
telling you,
so
the level
sneaky.
of
I love it.
sophistication in my bullshit is just great.
I love how you bake the compliment. It's so Jewish. You bake the compliments into the insult. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's like a kugel. I love it. Okay, fine. So you gossiped about her. Did you do anything to her face? Have you said
I
sort
think
of
that
backhanded?
more to her face, I think it's more a certain self-righteousness about my political opinions.
Okay, so you got into
political. Hers.
Okay, so you spoke down to her. Can we say that? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so spoke down to her, fine, condescended. I'm writing this on here, by the way, so that we can review it, okay? Hold on. Yes, I have your phone up here. Yeah, come get it. Okay, so you gossiped, spoke down to her. Anything else?
Oh, it goes back and forth like that. She speaks down to me.
No. Helen, I love you. I don't care what your sister did. I care what you did. I don't care. I don't care if your sister was like in Hamas, God forbid. I care that what you did. Because what
It's
she did,
really, we're very, the smarter I am, the more complicated my bullshit becomes.
well, that's the thing, right? We are so good at complicating these things because we don't want to look at the facts. The facts are you're jealous of your sister, and so you did stuff to make her feel shitty and to take her down so that you could feel better about yourself. Let's just call a spade here. And I say this without judgment because I do that shit all the time, okay?
Did you,
So-
Kaka? Did you?
Right. So let's say gossip spoke down. And in general, probably, did you ever withhold affection? Did you ever, anything like that? Any other way that would make her feel small?
I'm a very emotional person and an outgoing person and a feeling person. My sister is the kind of person completely reserved, completely held in, complete. That's the ethics of
Is she like that with
her
everyone or just
husband's
you?
approach to. No, with everyone.
I wonder why.
With her children, with everyone, with everyone. It's an ethos. I mean, as her children talk about it.
Okay.
It's an ethos. It's a way of managing the world.
Okay, great.
Just like mine is a way of managing the world. My way of managing the world is to be as upfront as I can be, which is not always too upfront, but some at this point more upfront than usual. But hers is different. Her way of dealing with the world is to hold it back.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. Let's get back to what you're doing. Okay, so gossiped, spoke down. Were you confrontational with her ever? Since you say you're such an upfront person?
I have been in the past.
Great. Okay, great. So we have, by the way, I want to point out, and Helen, I say this with absolute love. Notice how long it took to get to the ikar of that. Okay, because we all
ikar of what?
Of what you actually did to her. Because we all have a big story about she's like this and this like this. I just want to know what you did. Literally, that's it. Okay. And we all do this. It becomes work. We go on these archaeological digs to distill down where we're actually building on. Okay. So we have the whole story of the Roman Empire. Now we're going to talk about how they burnt down the Beit HaMikdash. Okay. Like literally that's it. Okay. So now we have, so here we have Helen's sister. Okay. Helen's sister, that upright, self-centered, closed down bitch, right? Helen's sister. What did Helen do to her? She gossiped, she spoke down to her, and she was confrontational with her. All in efforts to make her feel small because comparing herself to her sister, Helen also feels small. So she needs to bring her sister down to her level, right? So notice this is not your sister's problem. This is a you problem, right? Because this is nothing to do with your sister. This has to do with your feeling about you, right? So now, keeping that in mind, taking your sister, putting her on the shelf and looking only at Helen, how do you feel?
You know what? I'm feeling, just a second. I'm feeling, because she's such a public person, I'm feeling like you've got to levatel it. You've got to do in the
recording.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I'll figure out how to do that. No problem. Anyway, so now knowing what you have done specifically, what do you think is the best way to make amends to her for these behaviors?
To stop what I've been doing completely.
Okay, stop behavior. So living amends, yeah. Do you think it's helpful to acknowledge to her that you have done these things and
no?
Why?
Because I think that it will only hurt her to know that I've talked about her in public.
Okay, so the gossip piece, you don't have to, but what about the way that you've spoken? I'm talking about interacting with her, spoken down to her, confrontational with her. You don't think that it's helpful to, maybe take her out for coffee and say, hey, I know I've acted this way and I'm sure it's been hurtful to you. And I just want to say it was wrong and I regret it. And I'm going to resolve not to do that anymore. Do you think that might be helpful?
I'm doubtful that it's helpful. I'm doubtful that it's helpful.
Let me rephrase that. Do you think it would be helpful to you to say these things to her.
Yes, I could
That's my
see that
answer.
it could be
Okay,
helpful.
great, great. Okay, so we're gonna say in-person apology. Okay?
What does that mean, in-person apology? That I go to her?
Yeah.
And tell her?
Yeah.
Wow.
Invite her up for coffee, invite her up for lunch, invite her over for Shabbat lunch, whatever. Have a little apology, cute little sesh, cup of tea, whatever. Okay, so now let's look at the next
45 minutes.
45 minutes. Thank you. I'm just going to wrap this up and then we'll take more questions. Okay, so will this amend harm that person or anyone else? Now, forget leaving the gossip thing aside. Do you think that getting in touch with her and speaking to her and apologizing for your past behavior that might have been hurtful to her, would that hurt anybody else?
Probably not.
Not. Okay, so we'll say no. Okay, so now, ready to do the amend. Would you be ready to do the amends now, sometime, or never?
I think I might be ready to do it now.
Gorgeous. Okay, so now Helen has on her amends list her sister, who she gossiped about, spoke down to, and was confrontational to. And the way she's going to make amends is to stop that behavior with the living amends, get in touch with her and make an in-person apology for the behaviors that will not be, meaning by telling her sister the behaviors that wouldn't be hurtful to her personally. Making amends to her would not be harmful to anybody else, and she's willing to do it now. Thank you, Helen. You have just done a gorgeous step 8. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up, and if people have questions, I'm ready.